22 years ago in 2002, the Brazilian film City of God graced theaters. It was adapted from the 1997 best-selling novel by Paulo Lins. It debuted at Cannes. Fernando Meirelles, one of the two directors and main financer of the film, was drawn to the story since he was from Brazil, didn't know about favelas until he read the book, but then wanted to, shed a light on it to the rest of the world.
It had a complicated history with the U.S., right? Like, I know.
Well, the first year that it could have been nominated for an Oscar, it wasn't, but then they were able to fudge the rules, or not. They were able to nominate it the second year, and I think everything but best foreign film and best director, but they got 4 Oscar noms.
But there was even a problem with the poster, I remember, right, where they had to get rid of the guns that the people are holding in the bottom picture due to censorship, right?
It's funny because even now, though the film is widely acclaimed,
right,
almost everybody loves it.
It's my favorite
There are
film.
certain people that in the favelas who thought it was too violent, that they didn't like the way it was depicting its culture. But the point of the entire film is that there's this brutal reality of life in the favelas, the slums of Rio de Janeiro. The film is raw, bleak, hopeful, a society within a society that's sort of excluded, yet it's impossible to look away from once you start seeing what's going on there. Careless violence with harrowing coldness is how a lot of people have put it. The Brazilian show on Max, which just premiered on August 25th, and which we're talking about today, episode 2 comes out September 2nd for people who are interested. But it's set 2 decades later after the events of the film. In 2004, the series has Rocket return. He's still a photojournalist after all this time.
Rio de Janeiro,
we see him get the job at the end of the film. And anybody who hasn't watched the film, who wants, or they should go do that regardless.
When we do our best and worst ofs of the year, we have a section where we say the most anticipated shows coming out next year. And it was crazy to me when I figured out a week ago that this was coming out, because like I said, it's one of my favorite films of all time. And this absolutely would have been on that list had I known about it.
Right, but it wasn't like a major production. This is international. And yes, they had to team up with Max, but there have only been, I think, 182 reviews on IMDb, and by reviews I just mean ratings. And as far as reviews critically, I've seen 4 on Metacritic, which is insanely low.
But just the fact that it's a sequel series.
Yeah, you've got the same actors, or some of the same actors, returning who weren't killed in the original film.
I had to do a mental calculation while watching it to remember who was still alive by the end, because so many people die in that movie.
Right, and Rocket does a good job kind of explaining who's still alive and what they're up to these days. Most of the good guys are doing socially conscious missions for the youth there. But I do want to start this off before we jump into the plot, sort of talking about comparisons for what this first episode reminded me of. Because to me, I watched Boy Swallows Universe earlier this year, and I read the book to that, and it was based on a real experience in Australia, and it just reminded me how poverty breeds anger and hope, grittiness,
Absolutely.
Bloodshed, and a lot of emotion, but primarily for youthful stories, like kids. And that's why I think Boy Swallows Universe and also the original City of God was so engrossing, because it wasn't just that you were watching these crazy stories with gangs and first loves and stuff, but they were all kids. And it just, something about seeing it now where they're all grown up, yes, I feel nostalgic, but I also feel sort of less intrigued by the premise, because I'm not as shocked by it. It's not the runts taking over the whole place. It's just sort of another gang related story. That's not too much to knock on the show, and it doesn't give away my true full opinion of it, but it does make it so that nothing's ever going to replace the original film.
Yeah, and I mean, going into the series, I was very aware that I was probably going to have to tamper my expectations, because I knew that going into the TV series, I wasn't going to enjoy it as much as City of God. I agree with you. I think that the way that the film is told is in such a compelling way that nothing this TV series did, even if it was great, was going to match up to it.
And a lot of the stuff the film did was unintentionally great. For instance, because Fernando had to, and he's called this a very stupid decision, but fund the film himself. So no producers were willing to pay into this idea because they thought it wasn't going to be a success. And so he was able to cast who he wanted. He never got any production notes. He ended up casting all people who were actually from favelas, or mostly. There was one actor, I think Carrot, had been in other things, and Fernando, by the time that he had written that part, he was almost begrudging having to give it to him. But then the guy who played him was like, "No, I'll put myself into this role so much that you won't even be able to tell."
I thought I remembered reading somewhere that, like, they got the cast from just, like, one of those acting schools, or, like, it was some type of.
I think they took into account like 2,000 different kids from the favelas, and then from there they weeded it down to like 100, and then but the cool thing about Rocket, if I remember correctly, is that he's kind of like the Indiana Jones kid from Temple of Doom, where he went in with his friend and he was just there as a support person.
And then he got the main role.
And then, yeah, he got the main role because one of the casting directors saw them and thought, hey, this person looks like they would do a great job.
One thing I was a little sad about was that Lil Z, I think that the actor who played him, he's probably one of the best villains, I think, in cinematic history, honestly. So I was
At least
sad
in
that
Brazil, yes.
I thought that and we're never going to be able to see him again because of what happens to him in the film. But it was sad knowing that, like, they were going to have this series and they show him from the film, but that he's not going to be in it.
Yeah, I mean, Lil Z, I feel like his story was told. I think that was the entire point of City of God. I think it would be a huge sin if they brought back anybody from the dead.
I'm not saying that they should. I'm just saying that knowing he's not going to be in the series made me a little sad.
He was a main character of the film. He was like Rocket in a way.
I think he was the main character. Yeah.
You could make the argument because Rocket wasn't necessarily even in every single scene, right? We did follow Lil Z's storyline for a lot of it. And Rocket in this is, once again, though, the main focal point of like everybody is seeing things through his.
Well, he's narrating the TV series.
The only part we don't see is the villain now who killed Lil Z in the movie, right? What's his name? Braddock. And so he gets released from jail. He goes and joins the drug kingpin there again. Curio. He's a new character. And yeah, so my thing is, Rocket in the original movie was a coming of age thing, right? Like boyhood. And this now it's like his midlife crisis. Because he's been a photojournalist for so long. He's still documenting crime in Rio de Janeiro. And now it's like, what does he do with his career? Does he continue along that lines, or is he kind of giving it up to do something different?
Because let's talk about that. He's a hardened crime journalist. Like you said, at the very end of this movie, he decides that he's going to go with a picture that's going to get him the internship rather than becoming famous. And then he ends up now, I guess, for the last 20 years, has been this journalist. But
yeah, you see an award on his desk for 2000 being like one of the best journalists.
But my favorite part was actually the first scene of this series, because it was almost a shot-for-shot recreation of the film, at least for the first 30 seconds. Like the second that sword was being on the iron, or that was being sharpened by the rock, it transported me right back
on
into
the spinning
world.
Wheel?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's just like the knife that was being sharpened on the rock in the film. It was like I was there. I was glad that it was able to kind of already get me back into there. Like no time had passed.
Right. So the cameras aren't the same, and the cinematographer isn't the same, but they certainly tried to acclimate you back into the slums and show you the differences, because the violence there is a whole different type. It's no longer the runts running thing. It's no longer them running with swords and maybe a pistol or something, but instead they have like AKs, and the police force is much more brutal.
It's worse.
And it's more like Raid.
Even down to the chicken head movements, though. They were able to kind of make it like that. And also the animation of Cidade de Deus with Rocket and the blue animation, the intro is almost the same. Here it's just red. But
I'm glad you realized that. The idea of a photographer being the one to tell the story in the midst of all this violence, it has to remind you also of the other film that came out this year, Civil War, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, especially because he is in the middle of gunfire, and by the end it seems like he makes the decision not to follow the SWAT team into the next area because he's pretty sure they're just going to eliminate
this been the Rocket of 20 years ago, he may have done that. But as we see, he wants to go back. He goes back with the pictures, and then he wants to transfer into sports instead, which is a little bit of a strange transition that he wants to make. But then his manager is just so, he likes the pictures so much. Yeah, his boss, he's like, look. He almost gives him the Joel Kinnaman, like, I'll give you the opportunity when you're ready or whatever, but he wants to keep Rocket kind of where he is right now. I mean,
Rocket's basically Spider-Man, and that guy is Jonas Jameson.
Jameson.
Yeah. The other shows that I want to compare this to is Sons of Anarchy, because just like Kurt Sutter took motorcyclists, like that's what the original, like the cast here, I think is still primarily people who were from that area at least.
Right.
And yes, they brought in professional actors and actresses with Curio and also Braddock's girlfriend. And Braddock's girlfriend, the crazy one, right? She's the
Crazy,
one
that's
who's
her
really
nickname.
guiding the negative, the terror of what this next gang war is going to look like.
Definitely.
The
I
fight
think
rages on because of her.
it's gonna, yeah, whatever happens in however many episodes this season is going to be,
It's
it's
funny
going to
how,
be because of
yeah,
her.
she's such a strong female character, but the strongest female character from the original film, who was a good guy, is notably absent. And that reminded me of Party Down,
He
because you
mentions
have
her. He
Lizzie,
mentions her.
yeah, you have Lizzie Kaplan, right? Who wasn't in that fourth season, but really wanted to. So I expected
Third
to hear
season.
something, third season.
Yeah.
It's expected to read something about the fact that the girl from Dark Matters or Dark Matter would want to return for
What's
this.
her name? Angelica? I know it's her actual name is like Alice Braga.
Yeah, I think it was Angelica though for the show, or for the movie. And so Alice Braga, she just hasn't said anything yet. So there haven't been a lot of even interviews about this
I'd
show.
be surprised if she didn't at least make a cameo appearance, but you never know, really.
Yeah. The last two comparisons I have is The Offer, because I remember when they were talking about making The Godfather, they tried to go into Italy, right?
Right.
And then they got in trouble by some of the gangs there.
I think that The Offer kind of took some liberties with its storytelling, but they did, yeah, I think for the actual Godfather movie, they did go into Italy and they did film the car explosion scene there.
So when Mireles tried to go and make this movie, he met with the writer, right, Paulo, who is sort of Rocket, and they went into the City of God, and he wanted to film in City of God, but then they got kidnapped. The entire team did, and that sort of traumatized the crew.
They got kidnapped?
Yeah, so they went to a different favela, because City of God had been there since, I think, the 60s. That's where it was established as a western zone of Rio de Janeiro as part of the government strategy to systematically move favelas away from the city center and relocate inhabitants to the suburbs. But they shot the whole thing in a different community that also had drug dealers and such, but they didn't actually have to pay the drug dealers because they opened up community centers and soccer fields and gave them computers and stuff. And so they paid them back that way, which I found kind of interesting. Yeah. And so they were able to film in these places, and they were able to cast people organically from their places. And then they shot with these like old 16 millimeter type close-up shots and 35 millimeter stuff away, and on a budget. So it just made it feel so documentary-ish real.
Well,
right?
that was actually that was a little bit of my cons here, is that in the City of God movie, the way it's shot, it's a lot of handheld. It makes you feel like you are placed exactly in the action.
Lil Z actually filmed his own death, like, because you know how you get that shot,
right?
And
yeah.
I don't mean to spoil anything, but I said watch the film.
Right.
But he filmed it as he was getting shot, which was cool.
Right. Yeah. And so, but here it's like it kind of felt like it was, and maybe it's because it was Max, it felt like it was more professionally made. I didn't feel like I was in the film like the way that or in the series, the way the film made me.
I also have a little bit of bad news, is because the reason that the film looks the way it does is not only the cameras that they use, but also they then put it onto an SD, like digitally. They tried to like put it onto there, and then once they converted that, it all came out a little bit more gritty than they even would have liked. Fernando Mariellas, he wants to make a director's cut, and he's going to get the rights back to the film next year, and he's going to release it that way, where it's going to be much more smooth and recut in a different fashion. And that's a little scary, because he's saying that's going to be the new version that everybody knows, because once he gets control of it, he's just not going to be showing the other version anymore. So when people click onto it on like HBO and stuff, they'll probably see the director's cut.
Time to download it now.
Time to download it right now. Yes. And then Lady Macbeth, obviously, because of Braddock's girlfriend. And also in Rand. Do you remember in Rand, it was one of the girlfriends, and also Shogun, where she was the one who was kind of controlling the man's actions?
Yeah.
So it feels like Braddock just came out of jail and he's like, yeah, I'd love to control one of my corners again.
Here's the thing about Braddock.
Yeah.
I think it's really, really cool. That's why it's mixed on my sheet here. I think it's mixed. It's really cool that they brought someone so young from the film back, because I wasn't even sure if it was going to be the same actor. I thought that was cool. But his character is something straight out of Banshee. It felt so cartoony.
He looks a little like the main character from Banshee.
Even when he's like punching people, and that's the introduction in jail, from his slow-mo diving into the ocean to sex with his girlfriend, it just felt like he was the like I was like, like, this is
It's
not the
like this
same
is on
character.
Stars.
Yes,
Yeah.
right, or something that just didn't feel realistic at all, and that was one of the things that I like so much about the, movie. Every character felt realistic.
I agree with you there. Even to the point where some of the security guards for the original film were actually drug traffickers, and what else? It just felt like everything I read about a lot of the lines and stuff that made it into the film were just the kids talking about stuff that they'd grown up with, like not being able to bathe and stuff like that. That
Right,
wasn't
yeah.
written into the script. That was just kept
So a lot of it was
when they
ad-lib,
were off camera. No, when they thought they weren't even being filmed,
and then
they
okay,
literally
yeah,
just
yeah,
kept it
yeah.
in. The chicken scene at the very beginning, that was completely improv. The chicken wasn't supposed to escape. So
Wait, the chicken wasn't
the
toasted?
chicken wasn't supposed to escape. So yeah, everything about the original always stands up. This isn't going to hurt that. And then the television series that they made in the mid 2000s, which followed up on it, has an 8.2 on IMDb. People really like that. It was less violent, also made by Fernando Mireles. But this is less made by him. It's still got a writing credit in his name. He's executive producing it, but he's not directing it. And so if you're seeing some notable differences, then it's probably because of just the amount of other people coming in and stuff.
Well,
Yeah.
one of the main differences that we see is actually Rocket has a daughter now,
Oh yeah.
Lika.
So plot differences.
Lika's a singer, and he's not necessarily happy with her career choice because she's very sexual with her
She
dances.
just twerks a lot, you know? She's just twerking. And that's what made me, for the first part, I think I missed the fact that it was in 2004. And for some reason, my mind had, it's easy when you're watching City of God to kind of be like, this took place currently. It takes
Right.
place now, even though it's clear that it's from the 70s.
They even showed the interview at the end of the thing
Right.
showing that it was from the 70s. Yeah.
But like it took me a second when I saw the 2004. I thought, okay, the original was 2004. Now that's why it was 20 years ago. Now we're in 2024. And then it took me till the party scene to realize, no, we are in 2004. I think it was one of the songs that was playing, and the fact that there were no cell phones being shown.
That was one of my favorite parts. It was Sunday Morning was playing.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed that, but actually my favorite part of the whole entire series happens after we get introduced to the daughter, because we get Stringy. I knew we were going to get Rocket in the City of God series. I didn't know who else we were going to get. I didn't know if we were going to get anyone else from the film, but Stringy's montage of being a public leader, what they did with his character, that was my favorite part of the entire episode, because if you've seen the movie, you know that Stringy, he is someone who, even though he's grown up in Rio de Janeiro, isn't really part of the action.
Not at all.
I don't think we've ever seen him even kill anyone. I don't think he was there in any of the shootouts. He was always just a very side character. So the fact that they took him and made him the new Benny, as Rocket says during that montage, I thought was really smart, and I enjoyed seeing him, be the soccer coach and just enjoy helping the community.
Yeah, no, I did like that, but then they did it with like 3 other characters the same way. It felt like everybody who was a victim who survived from the original movie then became some social worker now. So like it was Knockout Ned's girlfriend. They even added new characters. The karate guy. What's his name?
You're talking about Delano.
Yeah, it just seems like everybody is community focused, which is great, but at the same time, much less. Like it doesn't show you from the kids' perspective, like what's going on in their lives. It doesn't show you that sort of violence. And yes, it's evolved and changed, but it was just something that you sort of had to get used to. And I think like when the title says the fight rages on, you would think that would be just as crazy as what the movie is, and it's not.
I would agree. Once the thing about the movie is every single scene, it could be 2 characters talking to each other, and it's intense.
Yeah.
And in the most City of God, I felt that even the series ever gets to is the very, very end. And even then, it was somewhat predictable when Crazy takes the gun off the table and shoots the person, because that was the most because the thing about the film is people could die at any moment.
Crazy being Braddock's girlfriend.
Braddock's girlfriend, yeah, and I guess we'll get there because I'm kind of skipping ahead a little bit. But yeah, one of the
it's a day in the life of Rocket. Basically, he's gone. He's seen the shooting going down. He's taken shots of that, and then he's been sent to the favelas again. He's meeting up with his friends, his mom, his daughter, and everybody else who might have survived. And then he runs into the new guy, the new kingpin in town, Curio, who's a good guy, but at the same time, he's running this evil business.
What'd you think of Curio?
I thought that he played the replacement villain pretty well. He's supposed to be the new Carrot, and I don't know exactly why they didn't bring that guy back, but again, like Alice Brago, is it? Maybe he just wasn't available or
I
something?
was severely disappointed that they weren't able to get Carrot back, and I think that it probably is a reason why I just do not think that Curio is that good a villain, because the thing about Carrot is that he leaned more on the good side even though he did bad things, and it feels like this person is the same way. Also, it took away from the original ending. The
Yeah.
original
Well,
ending, and here's the thing: the original ending, it's strangely dark. I'm talking about the final scene where the
I know.
runts are walking
The
down the
runs take
alleyway
over.
talking about how they're going to kill whoever, and again, like you're saying, it's little kids. And then here it's like, oh no, they decide to almost retcon that. They're like, the runts took over for a little tiny bit of time, and then Curio came in, and now everything is happier.
But that's realistic that they wouldn't be able to hold down the fort for very long.
It
You
was
know?
I
Like,
thought that the way that they ended it on the film, I always like kind of the ambiguity, you not really knowing the answers. And
do you remember
although
that scene in Hostel where there's like there's the kids group that like roams
yes,
around and they
right.
love candy and stuff,
Yeah.
but they like control the streets and then they like take out one of the villains or something? That's the type of thing where I would expect that to work for maybe a year. But then eventually like the police and the drug dealers, the bigger drug dealers are going to come in and say and sort things out a little bit.
I think because I agree with you that it's more realistic, but I think the thing that I like so much about the ending is that you didn't really know. There was a little part of you that was like, will they be able to grow up and take over City of God? And here it just felt like they were almost going with the happier version where it's like Curio, he's a way better person, and things in the City of God are not as bad as they were in the film.
Yeah. But they are now because he's going to clearly. Curio, I think, is destined to die. I think at Braddock's hand. And this season, they've already started filming season 2. So
Oh, there's gonna be a
they
season
do have a
2.
long-term plan, I think. For
I thought this was just gonna be a miniseries.
nope. It's going to go for 2 seasons. Now, there are. Have we gotten to the point? So the Curio comes in and he says, "Hey, Rocket, I know who you are, and I really, because you're a famous photojournalist, I really want you to shoot my daughter's quinceanera. I'm throwing this big party."
Yep. Right.
That's where Braddock shows up with his girlfriend saying, "Hey, I'm back." He's treated like the prodigal son. Curio taps him on the back and says, "Hey, I'm going to give you you're like I'm going to make sure that you're well off." Like, but then Braddock says what? He's like, "I don't care about that stuff.
The
I
only
want my
thing he
corner
wants,
back."
he just wants his corner. That's the only thing he cares about at this point.
All right. And so then in the next scene, they're at a softball game and he confronts Curio about that. And
Softball game,
soccer game. Sorry,
Yeah.
did I say softball? I meant soccer. And that's when he's not respectful about it, right? And
Right.
you have to show respect to the Godfather.
That very much is like the Godfather.
Right.
Yeah, kiss the ring, all that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so he's not even technically the guy's son, but he's always been treated as the guy's son. And so he's told to cool off a bit. And later on, Curio sends a messenger to Braddock to say, "Hey, you're going to split the corner with Junior, who's already controlling it," which is kind of it's a mediation tactic. It's like, I'm going to give you half of what you wanted, but half of what I
And
wanted.
probably if he does a good job, he'll get the full corner at some
Right.
point.
It's
Yeah.
very The Wire-esque. And but then it's also very predictable that he's not going to go for it because of the girlfriend.
Right.
And I don't know if you found it predictable that the guy was going to die, but it seemed like the messenger, don't shoot the messengers. That's exactly what she was going to do.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, it's the thing that made it predictable was that he kept insulting her. I was like, I don't think we need more of a reason that
Yeah, he
this
called
guy
her a
needs to
bitch,
die.
didn't he?
Well, it's not just that; it's throughout the whole entire thing. He calls her a bitch a couple
The
times.
interchange, yeah.
Before she finally does pick up the gun and shoot him.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, it's just supposed to show the war that's going to come. I think I enjoy the first half of the episode probably more than I did the second half.
Just the exposition part where he's like, "This is where everybody
Yeah,
is."
because I mean, one of the people I did not expect to show back up, and it was a little sad given what happened to Shaggy in the series, but Berenice, she shows back up.
So is she the one with the mole on her, because there were several flashbacks where whenever they showed the flashback, I didn't care if I recognized the person nowadays, but seeing them in the past, I was like, oh,
yeah, well,
that's so cool.
She's the one saying up the quinceanera. Yeah, she was the one that was able to actually leave the City of God, much like Rocket was able to, but then decided to come back because she got homesick.
Oh, she was the one in the car, the back of the car.
Yes, it was a little strange because it was like, that's where, like, Shaggy's death is very memorable, obviously very traumatic to her, probably forever, but then she decided to come back to the City of God. I found that explanation to be a little, I felt like kind of...
the fact that it's your home?
Not explained well, yeah.
It's such a dichotomy, like, of emotions that you're supposed to feel. So overall, what do you think you would give it?
Okay, so my score is definitely going to be inflated because of how much I like the series. I think that the acting was good. I was glad, maybe aside from Braddock, that actually none of the characters and Berenice's future explanation, none of the characters I felt like betrayed their characters from the film, which I think is a huge pro for the series. The fact they were able to get so many people back, Stringy being my favorite character. I really did kind of wish that that it was more intense, but I'm going to give the series a hopeful 7.5 out of 10 on the hope that the series does get better.
Okay. It has a 7.2 on IMDb, but again, 182 ratings, so not much to go off of there. Hollywood Reporter and The Guardian both gave it negative reviews. They called it more of an exposition overload. They weren't they also called it like a correction to the original film where there was so much violence and not enough of I almost by making the characters nowadays, like I was kind of hinting at, so good. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, that was what they were pointing at.
There
But
was
Roger
times
Ebert and Decider both liked it, and so it is kind of there's not that many reviews, but right now it's up in the air how it's supposed to be received.
There was times where they showed so much of the film that it felt like it was a clip episode
Huh.
for the movie, and that also goes along with kind of my other con, which is Rocket spends a lot of time explaining what happened in the film, and at first it was helpful because again you saw the characters and who they were, but after a certain while it was like, yes, I know, I remember the movie pretty well.
Yeah. Well, for those who don't, it's a good recap, I guess. It does feel a little less grounded with the police force being more deadly, the weapons more deadly, but somehow everything else is more safe. Like
Mhm.
that just doesn't fit as well as nicely as it might. And then also, I said the title itself doesn't really make too much sense. Just in general, the fight rages on is not that like great. If they had
Right.
just called it the City of God TV show, like I would have been perfectly fine with me.
So where are you gonna give this series out of 10?
I personally am not going to rate it because I don't really like. I don't know what to do with this one. I enjoyed watching it nostalgically, but I do understand the criticisms here, and I don't know if I can consciously say like this is a great show that you should just jump into. I can't like run in there recommending it.
I'm kind of in the same boat. Like I said, my score was pretty inflated just because of how much I like the film.
All right, 7.5 is nothing to laugh at though. Anything else you want to say?
Just that my top 5 films, because I hinted at it earlier, Skyfall, La La Land, City of God, The Dark Knight, and It's Such a Beautiful Day. Do you have a top 5?
No, but who's your favorite character of the new show? I do understand.
Stringy.
Oh, Stringy, you
Yeah.
probably you did say that. The girlfriend, even though they did like spend too long on the sex scenes with her, like I understand she provides the most spark, you know,
That's true, yeah.
more
I
than
mean,
Curio does. She provides at least that, and so I understand why people might like her the most because she's at least giving people some excitement of like what to. You add that element there, and I can see why that would be
she
successful.
certainly lives up to her nickname, Crazy. So,
Right. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. Bye.
bye.